So we will start with our success criteria. The first part of the success criteria is to remember our SHOP. Spelling, handwriting, order, and punctuation. We want to make sure that we're spelling, using our phoneme knowledge to spell our words correctly. Although you may be doing this on a computer, if you are going to write it out, make sure you've got your joins, your spacing, the correct size, and the formation properly in your handwriting. Order. We want to make sure that the report is written in a correct order, which I will go over later. And punctuation. All sentences must have capital letters and full stops in the correct places. And you may want to use exclamation marks or commas where appropriate. Our next success criteria is I can use an appropriate layout with the relevant headings. So when you write a report, there are specific headings that we use, and today I'm going to show you the headings we use in a science report. So first of all, we would have the title of the experiment. Now, our experiment that we did today is called the rain experiment. So you always want to make sure you've got your title so that we know what the report is about. You would then have the purpose. So the reason for your experiment. So the reason for our experiment was to figure out how rain forms and to test the water cycle and how that actually happens, the processes within that. So that would be your purpose. The next title is the materials used. So that is everything that you used in the experiment, and you can use bullet points to list them. So for example, we needed hot boiling water. And we needed a pan. Now remember, when you do bullet points, you don't need to put a full stop at the end, okay, because you're just listing, especially with a list, because they tend to be one or two words. They're not sentences, you're listing, okay, so you do not need full stops, you'll be pleased to know. Our next title is the method. Now you'll notice I'm using some punctuation here that we haven't used before, and this is called a colon. Now what a colon is, it tends to come after the title, and it's basically saying, here it is here. So you have your title, and the colon is saying that the information is going to come after that. So the method is our next title. Now, with the method, I would be looking for you to basically write what happened. What did you do? And I'll go over that in the next part of the video. Our next title is going to be the results. And that is where we write what happened. What happened in the experiment. So the method is the steps taken, and the results is what happened. Now you will then have the discussion. I've missed a title here because I'm going to do a full video of it, but I will need to go over that just now to explain what to do in the discussion. So after you've done your purpose, I'm just going to squeeze this in. Obviously you will have space in between. I'm just showing you what the headings are just now. So your hypothesis is where you guess what you think will happen. Now, obviously, you will have probably already done the experiment before you write this report. Normally in a report, you would plan the experiment, you would write your title, your purpose, the hypothesis, you would list the materials you're going to use, and then you would do the experiment and then write the rest. So the reason that is because you need to predict what you think is going to happen. So in the experiment, I did ask you to stop and think, what is going to happen here? And that is your hypothesis. So have a think about what you thought was going to happen. What did you think was going to happen when the water was getting hot? What did you think was going to happen when the hot water hit the cold surface? And what did you think was going to happen when the water started gathering on the cold surface? That is where you write your hypothesis. And then at the end, in your discussion, you would write whether you think your prediction was correct. Was your prediction correct? And say why. So for example, if you said, I thought that the water was going to build up on the cold surface and drip off. In the discussion, you could say that that's what has happened because that is part of the condensation precipitation cycle. Or if you thought, I thought the water was going to get hot and rise. That would be correct, but then you could add on to that it started to evaporate into the air. So that's where in the discussion you reflect on what your guess was and basically whether your guess was correct or not based on the results. And at the end you can write a conclusion which basically summarises everything that you did in your experiment. So just to summarise, the first part of the success criteria is to have your all your titles. So the first title is the title of the experiment. Then you have your purpose, the reason for the experiment. Then you have your hypothesis, which is your guess of what's going to happen in the experiment or what you thought was going to happen. You then have the materials used, the method, which is what you did, the steps you took. What were the results? How did this compare to what you guessed? And what is the conclusion? Now, this would be the spicy level, so that's why I'm going over all of it. If you choose a simpler level, I wouldn't expect you to use all the titles, or at least I will have given you the start of the answers, because that is a lot for you to do. So if you want to take the challenge and you're feeling confident, then that is all the titles. These are all the titles that you would need in a science report. So, as I said, one of the titles is to include the materials used. So that is a list of all the resources you require. So you need to have that in a report so that if somebody wanted to do the study themselves, they know exactly what they needed. So your title, as I said, was materials used or resources used. I'm just going to put materials. And you use your bullet points to list all the things that you used. And as I said, you don't need to put full stops at the end of them, but you do still need your capital letters, so do not forget them. So list everything you used in your experiment. So, just like we did in instructional writing, a report will require some adverbs, particularly when it's a science experiment report. And these will be used in the method section because that is when you're describing what steps you have to take in the experiment. So take a moment just now, take, let's say, 1 minute to think of as many adverbs as you can. So these are some that I came up with. Let's just remind ourselves, an adverb is describing, a word that describes how you do something, and that's why we call it an adverb. It's like an adjective verbs. Remember, an adjective is a describing word, a verb is a doing word. So we're describing how to do something. So I had gently, carefully, quickly, gradually, cautiously. And I wonder what you came up with. You might have had some similar to mine. So when we are writing our method, we want to have steps, just like we did when we did our instructional writing. This part is really the instructional part of the report. So you can say step 1, boil some water in a kettle. Full stop. Step 2, what adverb could you put at the start of this sentence? So something, pour the boiled water into the pan. Which one would work best there? Of course, it would be carefully, or maybe cautiously, or safely. Okay, because that is part of our safety, that we need to make that clear in our report. So in the method, use the steps to organise your method describing how to the steps to conduct the experiment, and try and use a couple of adverbs in there whilst you're doing it. Please remember your full stops and capital letters. You might also want to use an exclamation mark where appropriate, or commas if you have longer sentences and you are confident in using them. So, at this stage, you will have written your title, you would have written your purpose, and the hypothesis, as I said, is where you predict what is going to happen. So, my prediction was that the water was going to create steam when it boiled. And as we know, that is called evaporation. So that was my hypothesis. Now, you will have more than one hypothesis because there were several things that happened. A second hypothesis could be that you thought the water would disappear, or that you thought the water would get hotter, or when it came to the second part where you held the cold metal above it, you might have maybe guessed that the cold metal was going to get hotter. So you should have 3 hypotheses, 3 guesses about what you thought would happen at each stage in the experiment. And then part of the success criteria is to link that hypothesis to your discussion, or that's if you're doing the spicy option, or you might just put it in your conclusion. So If I had discussion as a heading, I would say, as I predicted, the water created steam as it got hotter. This caused the water to evaporate. I'm not going to be able to fit that on. Evaporate. So you would link your guess to what actually happened in the results. So you should be able to link that with each one of your hypotheses. Now, as I said, I've created 2 separate tasks. One is slightly easier. So if you're wanting to go for the spicy option, then you would want to have as much detail as you can think of in your discussion. If you're going for a simpler option, just choose one of the hypotheses to write a discussion on, because obviously this is the first time you've ever done a report. So just do what you can, and I will give you feedback for you to work on in your next report.